Hey YouTube, this is Jen, your pudgy picker, and
Kim.
and we are here today with episode 5 of our podcast, Two Sisters, One Booth, where we talk exclusively about our antique mall booth, our space, how we run it, different challenges we have, and this week we are going to talk about the question, are you considering closing your booth? So whether you're a newbie to this booth, or you've had it for a little while, or you've been doing it for quite some time, one time or another, we've all had the thought, do we want to keep doing this? Right, Kim?
Oh, yes.
Ooh, tell me, how many times?
Oh, yeah. Right now. No.
So, there are many questions to answer this. If you're thinking about closing your booth, we want to ask you a few questions, which of course you can answer. I won't hear your answer, but that's okay. It's something to make you think about the reasons why and if you can fix it, and if so, how can you fix it? So I guess the first thing when we started making notes for this podcast was thinking, are you making your rent? And that seems to be a kind of barometer on where you are with selling in a booth.
That's kind of important.
You think?
Money. It's all about the money.
So, if you are not making your rent and you are a new person, then you need to understand that that's going to take a little time. I've heard the owners of our particular antique mall say 2 to 3 months. That if you aren't making your rent, you're not failing, you're just getting started. I think 1 to 2 months sounds more reasonable, but that's what do you give me that look for?
1 month?
1 to 2.
1 to 2 months. That's not long enough. You know better than that. Refocus, regroup, start over.
I don't know. And this is not to brag or anything, but we have never not made our rent. Now, I'm not sure exactly. When we first started nearly 8 years ago,
Long time ago.
Yeah, we had never done anything like this before. We never had a physical space. So we were slower to get going and slower to build up not only our display pieces, but the things we were buying and trying to figure out what was selling and what wasn't selling.
Which I think in this case is what a lot of the people who may be listening are in that same position too, as having just started.
Yeah.
You have to take time to get the booth right.
Yeah, and you can't really compare someone starting out new as to when we changed malls, because when we left our old space, we essentially knew basically what size booth we were going to have. And we had display pieces enough for a double space. So we literally sat down, pen and pencil, measured all, well, I did. Now last week when she goes, you know the measurement of that? Yes, I do, because I was like the teenage girl planning what her house was going to be set up like someday. And I measured everything, and I sat there with a pen and pencil, and a paper, and I literally figured it out. So we had a really good basic idea of how things were going to be set up. So that really kind of doesn't qualify, because we had been at it for 6.5, almost 7 years.
Mm. Well, when we're going back again to, I think when you start a booth, you have to give yourself, I say, 3 months before you're going to decide to close it.
Yeah.
Because your first month, especially if you're new to the game, your first month is, what am I going to set stuff on? Okay, put that in. Well, I got this plastic shelf. Well, next week or so, I found this in the garage. You redo that. So yeah. I think especially the first month or two, sometimes longer, you're constantly kind of reevaluating, bringing in different things to try. But I really think it takes that long because you have to. There's so many avenues to look at in this to see. Am I making the money? If I'm not, what can I do? What are other people doing? So I really think
Yeah.
it takes about don't think about closing up for at least 3 months till you kind of get a grip.
I think another thing I think of is your reasons why you started the booth. We've talked to a lot of vendors, and they say, I'm getting older. I have a house full of, beautiful pieces. I'm downsizing. My kids are adult. They don't want my stuff. So I'm looking to clear things out. And then there are the people who are like, I'm looking at this purely as a business. I want to buy inventory to bring in to sell, which is pretty much what we do.
Families inheriting from their parents, or
yeah. So you have a lot, and you come in with a mindset of, this is what I want to sell, and you need to, you might have to readjust your thinking. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but mainly we need to, ask ourselves, are we making rent or not? Why are we not succeeding? What would be some reasons? And we kind of make this into two different categories. There are issues or things that we're not doing, and there's things that might be happening that might be out of your control, such as the mall itself. So let's discuss some issues with the mall itself. What could be hindering us from succeeding and making money and making us want to close our space that is essentially out of our control?
yeah, things like the location of the mall. Maybe there's not enough traffic, or it's out of the way, or inconspicuous.
I think our first place that we were in had been there for a while, and it was a destination. It was not necessarily a place you ever just drove by and said, ooh, what's that? The new place that we're in, well, it's 2 years old now, but the place we're in now is in a prime location. It is in a really busy, full strip mall that has a Gabriel Brothers, which is a clothing store, and a DMV, or Department of Motor Vehicles place where you get your plates or your tags or any of that stuff, or your license. So there's a lot of people coming in for that. There's a tanning place, there's a Dollar Tree, and then there's us, and then there's a workout place, and I think there's one other little teeny place, but I don't know if there's anybody in it or not.
At the very end, no.
No, I think it's right next to Gabriel. But anyway, all the businesses are busy. It is on a main drag.
Yeah, the main drag, and it is a 4-lane, and turns into 5 for turning here and there. But, that's a really, really busy stretch of road there.
So we've had at our mall, have little slips of paper, and we have people fill it out when they check out. And one of the questions on there is, where did you find out about us? And the top answer from day one to day, now of 2 years later, is drive-by. That is the main thing. People, how many times have you been driving and you go, ooh, wonder what that is? If you hear any meowing, that's Kimberly's cat.
She's a Siamese, so she sounds like a baby. There's no one crying. No one is being harmed in the videotaping of this show.
And how old is Miss Coombsy?
She's a good 18 years old.
Yes.
So we're talking, so she's going to think we're talking to her.
Yeah.
So ignore the cat in the background.
So, yes.
Sorry.
No. Well, at my house you get barking. At Kim's house you get meowing. So there's always some kind of furry children noise going on. So in talking about the main reason I said people is because they're driving by. And how many times have you driven somewhere and you see something and you're like, ooh, I wonder what that is. I'll have to stop there one of these days. And if you're anything like me, you can do that for a good 8 months. And by the time you finally say, you know what, I have time to stop, it's closed. Mm-hmm. But with our business, that's one of the biggest things, is people just driving by. And the other one that seems to be number 2 in the last year is hearing about it from a friend. Mm-hmm. Hey, so-and-so, when you come into town, there's this really cool place. So we have a lot of really good traffic and, a really excellent location. And I would say that the first place we were in was a little more rural. I said it right. And this one is a little more cityified. So the location does make a big difference.
Yeah.
What other reasons could be out of our control?
Well, poor advertising or poor signage. So people don't know what the business is or if it's even open.
Yeah, I think sometimes businesses seem to be named something strange and you're not sure exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. So, ours is called Antiques and Uniques. So you're going to get an eclectic mix of different things. The colors of the store and the signage and our advertising is like a teal, turquoise, and white color. So it really pops out. It grabs your attention. And
and one of the letters is crooked too. So
yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah. So it's kind of neat that business cards, signage, advertising, any of that stuff is all kind of color coded. Our Facebook, if you have a chance, look us up. Antiques and Uniques. We are in Wickliffe, Ohio. There's like 4 cities that are right next to each other. They all start with W. Yeah. So look us up and you'll see. So I think that's another thing with the advertising is you see that turquoise color, you see that little crooked letter on there, and it keeps bringing your mind back to us.
And there's a bright orange, or there's a bright neon sign that says "open" when you're open. All those things play an important role.
So being open, that's another thing. Some antique malls, a lot of them are, of course, owned by individuals. They're not a corporation. They are somebody's hobbyist or somebody's career that they've chosen. And some of them have really, really strange hours.
Yeah, a lot of them close at like 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I could never go into half of them in that one little town that's nearby. Because every time I stop, they're closed.
Yeah, so our place is closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. It is open Wednesday through Sunday. Wednesday through Saturday is 10 to 6. And Sunday is 12 to 5, or is it 12 to 6?
No, it's to 6,
It's still to 6, but they start a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the thing is about that is once you kind of get that in your mind, then you know when you go out there. I know before we even had a booth at the other place, we piled Mom in the car and we went out on a Monday, and boy, we were primed to go in there. We pull up and there's like crickets in the parking lot.
There's not one car.
Anybody, and we were like, oh. And then we said, well, we already got Mom out of the house, and she put her face on, so we're going to go find something to do.
Yeah,
I don't know what we ended up doing, but
well, we did, but it wasn't as much fun as we thought we were going to have.
Yeah, so having odd hours or even hours that vary from day to day so drastically that it's just it doesn't make any sense logically. Mm-hmm. You think about a thrift store. When you go in, most of them have a distinct smell.
Usually not a good one.
Yeah. So is the mall overall kind of dirty? Is it overall kind of has that scent to it? That can be a real turnoff for people. And another thing is bad lighting. Is it kind of dim? Is it kind of that lends to that dingy kind of feeling? So these are different things that are totally out of your control, but it could be affecting, your sales and whether you want to be there or not. This isn't something we mentioned because we were discussing this before we started, but if you go into a mall and there's a ton of empty spaces, that's another thing. I mean, sometimes you go in and, there's a space or two that's empty. There's, people moving from one booth to another, or there's new vendors coming in. But when you go in and you're walking up and down the aisles and there's a lot of empty spaces, that's kind of you kind of feel like they're going out of business type thing, and,
Yep.
So, I mean, that could lend to that.
Dirty floors.
Yes.
Just generally the store not being clean.
And there are going to be vendors in every mall that there's a few that are junky or not well kept. But when you have more than a handful, that kind of lends to a feeling of the whole place.
Yeah, again, like we've mentioned before, the feel that you get when you're in a place sets up how people react to the place and what pricing they expect. If you're going into a garage sale or a flea market, you're expecting to pay very, very little for something. If you find that same item, we're talking about, one of the local thrift stores has a contract, I guess, for one of the Target donates a lot of their clearance items to them. And when you go in there, even though you know they're from a store and they have the store pricing and everything still on them, you still hate to pay that price because you're thinking this is a thrift store, it was donated,
Yep.
I shouldn't pay the price. Now, if that was something I wanted and I saw it on the clearance aisle in the store, I'm liable to jump up and down and be all excited.
Woohoo!
Look at the price, I only paid this much. But it's that mental thought. When I go to a thrift store, I want thrift store prices. If I go to a clearance section in a retail store, I'm accepting retail clearance prices. If I walk into this, mall that we're at, I'm going to expect to pay a decent price for things because it's not junky and dirty. I'm not looking at it as a thrift store pricing.
Yeah, and when I go to a garage sale, I don't like to have to dig through things, and I don't like to have to pick up things that are dirty. But if it's a good price, I'm going to dig around because I know I'm going to make money. Mm-hmm. When I go to a place that's more of a boutique kind of feel,
Yep.
I don't want to touch stuff that's dirty. I don't want to dig in bins. And if you have, like I said, more than a handful of vendors that are running their business that way, that's going to turn people off. And if you're on aisle number 2 or 3, and there's a whole bunch of people who have junky booze in aisle number 1, people may not even get to your spot before they say, this is kind of crappy. I think we need to go somewhere else.
That's exactly it.
So, that's something that management needs to address. And maybe if that's what's going on in your mall, talk to the owners, see where their heads are at on that. But to a certain degree, you can't really control that. That's kind of out of your hands. So we've discussed things and issues with the mall and things that you can't necessarily control that might be affecting your sales or making you contemplate closing your booth. Now we're going to talk about issues with your particular space that might be hindering sales. So what do you think, Kim? What can we come up with that?
I think your booth being stagnant, things not moving around. They're constantly in the same place all the time. And even if you're bringing in new merchandise, you're not displaying it to the front or dominantly. So people tend to go by, and after a while it looks the same all the time. They are like, well, nothing new has changed there. I'm not even going to bother to go look.
Yeah, we've talked about this space, and please, look up some of our booth tours that we've done. We have a glass and metal shelf that's right in the front, and we try to, I know it's been a little difficult recently, but we try to every month to month and a half change that out so we have a different theme. We had clearance stuff for a while. Now we just brought out all of our spring and summer stuff. So each month we try and come up with, okay, let's do all crafting things. Okay, let's do, we have a lot of nautical stuff. So we're going to do seashells and, frames and lighthouses and nautical stuff. That's something else we're going to do.
We've done color themes.
Mm-hmm. We did all white, and that was really cool. That seemed to do really well. Mm-hmm. So you just, kind of think of, what do I have in my booth that's grouped? And it could be stuff that you've had for a while, but when you group it and stage it in such a way that it's like, we did like white and silver, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And stuff sold. Mm-hmm. So, if you can have a spot in your booth that continues to change and be fresh, it's so important to do that, because you want people to stop and go, oh, that looks different. So, we've also, when we were talking before, talked about a location of the booth. Depending on how big or small your antique mall is, there are spots that are more desirable than others. I know now I'm speaking from experience, and if anybody else agrees, I'm sure this will sound familiar to you. When I go to the thrift store, or I go to a store or a grocery store or a place that I go more than 2 or 3 times, it's somewhere I go often. I have a map in my head. I go in and I go about shopping in a certain way. Is that with you, Kim, too,
Oh,
do you
yeah,
think?
definitely.
I mean, you go in, I go down this aisle, then I turn here, then I go over to this and look at that, then I go back. I mean, I don't know, I'm a creature of habit in that way. But you come straight, when you come in, you're coming in along the front of the store is the main aisle. And then if you go all the way to the end, then you essentially go up and down the aisles until you get to where the registers are on the right side of the store. So we are actually on the very last aisle. We are literally 25 to 30 feet from the registers.
Yep.
So
We didn't get to choose that spot, but it was perfect. It chose us.
Yes. So I mean, you have this idea of when you go in and you start looking. I think another problem in our old antique mall is that it was literally twice the size of the one we're in now. And you think, wow, that must have been great, and it's so huge. We were in a spot that was a little more than halfway through. And if you have somebody coming in and they're going up and down the aisles, people start getting tired.
And they get lost.
And they get lost. And they
did we just do that aisle? I don't remember. Did
Yeah.
we?
So with that type, I mean, you could just get to a point where somebody comes in, and by the time they're halfway through the store, there's the cafe. Let's sit down and have a drink. Whoa, look at the time. We got to go home. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think, that kind of hindered us a little bit. That if we would have been closer to the first or second aisle in the store, that might have been better. And with our antique mall, and the old one too, if you say, I think I would do much better on this aisle or that aisle, you can tell our owners, when a space in this particular area opens up, we want to be considered for that. And people have done that. People move for a variety of reasons. They need more space. They need less space. They want a better space. They want,
one with better lighting.
Yeah. Some with electricity. Not all the booths in our mall have electricity. Ours does. Mm-hmm. Also, when they came in and redid the floors, some of the floors, less than half of the floors, were damaged to the point where they had to put down indoor-outdoor carpeting. Ours happens to be a booth that has carpeting, and we're very happy with that. Some people bring in like a large area-sized rug, and some have none at all, so we were very happy to have that. So other than booth location...
Well, you got to walk down our aisle or the other aisle to go to the bathroom. That helps.
You got to do it to get to the registers, the cafe, or the bathroom.
Hey,
and if you're there more than an hour and a half, you're going to have to hit one of those before the day is out. Also, this is going to sound funny to have the two opposites, but your booth is stuffed to the gills, or there's barely anything in it. And both of those are a real problem. If it's so stuffed, you can't even walk in.
And there have been some that we couldn't help but walk around and critique them. It's like you can't step into the booth, a 10 by 10 foot booth, and you literally couldn't even step in to pick up or look at something in the back of the booth.
Yeah.
There's no floor open.
Yeah, there's like no way I'm going to try and break my neck to get back to look at that.
Yeah, I don't want it that bad.
And it literally looks like the owner of the booth, the vendor, came in and just kind of literally tossed stuff in. There was one booth that was kind of sort of crowded, and this was in our old mall, and Kim probably knows exactly where I'm going, and I've probably mentioned it before, but right in the center, where there was only space to look around, they put in a plastic race car bed. So there was absolutely no getting in the booth.
I don't even know how they got in there to do anything with it.
Either.
Well, I don't think they did. That was part of the problem.
Yeah.
They just kept filling it up all the way to the front and then left it.
I mean, if you're, it's people have gotten ready for the day. They've gotten in their cars. They have money. They drove all the way to your space, and you're going to hinder them that they can't even look at your stuff. So you could say, wow, I got all this stuff, and the more stuff I have in, the more my sales. That's not true. And then there's some booths in both spaces or both antique malls that we've said, if you sold everything in this space, they wouldn't make their rent.
They have more display pieces than they have things to sell.
Yeah. So, stuff like that, you're like... And then that got Kim and I talking about the different reasons people have an antique booth. There are some people that probably never make their rent. But being there is a social... I'm out of the house. I'm part of a team. I have my friends there.
You feel like you have...
Yeah.
An accomplishment for the month. Like, I went there and I did this and I feel accomplished.
So there's people that have a booth and not making rent. That's not really a top concern to them. Or just making your rent. I mean, I love our mall. I love our owners. I really enjoy spending the time with my sister. I like a lot of the other vendors are nice. But I'm there to make money. And if I'm not making money, then I need to make a decision if I'm going to keep going or what the problem is.
There's a lot of other places I can go for free to make friends.
Yeah, go to the library.
There you go.
So the point is, I mean, if that's your motivation, then you're probably not real concerned about making rent. So, but for those of us who are in this to make money, that's a big problem. Another thing that we talked about was... Some people, vendors, have a very narrow niche of what they're going to sell. And that can be a kiss of death for making a lot of money.
Yeah, and this again is subjective, but there are some booths that have very few things in them. But the few things that they have in them are very nice. Very high quality, very high priced. Now, they don't have stuff that goes through the register every day. But when they make a sale, because their stuff is really nice,
Yeah.
they make a sale and they do well on it. So to have a small amount of stuff in that respect isn't a problem.
Yeah.
But when you have a small amount of stuff that's not selling.
Yeah. When you can, like we said, if they sold everything in this space... they would not make their rent. And, we're going to, down the road, we're going to talk about our personal experiences with our mall. And we will disclose what we're paying a month and basically what we're making. Because we want to be honest and transparent and let you know, what to expect. And it's going to be different in your area than it is with us. But the point being is, you're paying money for that space. We have 100 square feet to deal with. And we have to make sure that it is stocked in such a way that we're going to make money that's going to be appealing to buyers, that we're not going to stress or tax them out, or they're not going to fall and break their neck in our space, or something's not going to fall from the ceiling. We just had a neighbor in our space that was spoken to that had a old wooden ladder across a double space, which is 20 feet, and they have stuff hanging on it, and it was bowing.
Yeah.
And we had a couple customers that said, that's really concerning, because if that falls on somebody's head and they get sued, there goes everybody's job and everybody's money-making opportunity. So, that's stuff you have to consider. When we talk about having a narrow niche, that would be... We know people. Let's start naming. No, we're not going to name names. She looked at me, scared her. No, let's name some examples. One booth had primitive stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Stuff that's, antique-y looking. It's all of a certain color
Brown
scheme.
colored stars.
Brown, burnt red, dark orange. Mm-hmm. The little houses with the windows cut out. It was mainly, I know who I'm talking about, mainly that particular item. Or if you're only selling guy stuff, if you're only selling girl stuff, if you're selling all purses, if you're selling all, only furniture. There's a lot of different ways that people do that. And you're going to have customers. You're going to have sales because you're going to find people that like that stuff. But if people go by and you don't like primitive, or you don't like, there's one in our mall too that's everything is Paris and London and pink and pastel and frilly and girly, and the booth is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But how many people are going to go by and look and go, ooh, and keep walking? So if you want to make decent money, you're going to have to broaden out in the things that you offer.
And again, it all comes back to where your booth is located in that. Also, I know us being in two different locations, that one place can sell this kind of stuff and it flies out the door.
Yeah.
And then in our other place, that stuff isn't selling so hot. It sells a little here and there, but that's it. So again, you have a niche, and it might be a good niche, but you just have to have the right niche in the right place for the right customers. And if you're not getting the sales, then it's probably not a good place for that niche.
Now, down the road, we might go into a little more detail as to how the second antique mall, came about, because the owners knew and had some relation with the owners of the previous place. But our main reason in bringing that up is the two malls are about 25 to 30 minutes apart, and they are worlds apart.
Oh, yes.
And when the new mall opened, people who were in the old mall knew the owners, knew this new location was. They thought it was in a better location. They knew the owners really well. It was closer to home. So I would say at least 75% of the people, vendors in the new mall, were people from the other mall.
Yeah.
So there are people who come in. I've been doing this for years. I know what sells. This is what I have. This is the inventory I am bringing over with me. And there are several of them who have left, who are not there anymore.
Well, a lot of them may have kept their spot open there and opened here.
Yeah.
And some left there and went to the other one and then left it, so there was a mix.
But we know people who had a space in the new mall and said, nothing's selling. Now, I'm sure they were selling some stuff, but they evidently, it wasn't what they were used to. And we know of a few people now who have a space who keep saying, I'm not making rent. I'm not really selling anything. I don't know if I can stay open. And for whatever reason, they're hanging in there. But that is something that's totally up to, us, what we're going to sell. Because like I said, when you come in and say, here's what I got, here's what I'm going to sell, that may not be what people want to buy. And you may have to get to the conclusion that whatever I'm selling, people just don't want.
In this area, I either have to find a place where this sort of thing would sell, or I have to switch up what I'm selling. Again, it falls back onto why are you selling?
Yeah.
If you're selling to clean out old inventory or a hoard of stuff, it's different than if you're selling to make money and to, it just puts a whole different spin on things.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Maybe your prices are too high. You have really good stuff, but if nobody's buying it, then maybe your prices are too high. So I think it's very difficult in any situation to be self-analysis and self-critical of, I'm doing something wrong. I'm bringing in stuff that people don't want, or it's too high, or it doesn't look a certain way, and nobody in this area wants this. So you have to, think about those things and be self-critical and say, what am I doing wrong? And that's not always easy to do, to admit we're wrong in something.
No, and sometimes you may have a space that's just too big, like you were saying, with having a sparse amount of things. Is your space too big? Do you have a double booth? Maybe you should transition down to a single booth, or maybe there's someone else, because we've seen it done before, that someone else has a small amount of stuff or a specialized article that they want to sell, and they've gone in halves with somebody else for a booth. So if you're not making your booth rent, then maybe your booth is too big for the amount of items you have or the prices you have set.
That's true. We have a wide variety of sizes in ours. The space previously was a Big Lots. And when you go in, according to fire code, the aisles have to be a certain width. It's like 5 feet. So when you go in and they start kind of mapping out how they want it, there's going to be maybe a few oddball spaces. We have half booths. Some booths are 10 feet wide, 5 feet deep instead of 10 feet deep.
Yeah.
We have 3/4 spaces, or a space that looks like you cut the corner off, because that's how the shape of the aisle is. Full booths, booth and a half, two double booth, and there's even a few 2.5 sizes.
That's
the corners,
huge.
yeah, there's 2 corners. So I mean, you can imagine what you can fit in there, and that's a lot. So not only do you have to have enough inventory to fill that space, but you have to have enough display pieces for that as well. And when we started in our old mall, we had a 10 by 10 or a full booth.
It was painted your favorite
Oh
color.
my gosh. This woman goes to the whoopsie counter, and I can tell why that paint was a whoopsie in the Lowe's or where.
Wasn't that bad?
Oh my gosh, it looked like baby poop. I'm sorry, it did. And on a squash kind of day. You like that?
Yeah, mashed pea kind of day.
Yeah, mashed pea, yeah. So
yeah, we started with the one.
Yeah, so we had one, and then of course I needed more space. So there was literally across the aisle, I got a half space, and I kept mainly all of my stuff in there, and then I paid the rent accordingly. In the first booth, we split. Now, us being so wonderful and successful, you wouldn't think that we've had experience with making a decision to close a space, but I must confess.
With the little reminding
With
earlier.
a little yeah, she brought it up, and I was like, oh, yeah. We had showcases, and the showcases were essentially 4 feet wide, 7 feet tall, and the shelves were about maybe 12 to 14 inches deep.
Yeah.
And I had a showcase which was locked, and I did all jewelry in it. And I had a beautiful set. It was just gorgeous. I got so many compliments from other vendors. Beautiful. How I accessorized it and how it was set up and how everything was priced. And I mean, the profit margin was really good without being gouging people. It was awesome, but nothing sold. And that was an area where it was a niche area, because you think of all the people coming in, you think it's mainly women who are going to look at this jewelry. So that cuts out 50% of your customers right there. And not every woman wears or wants to buy jewelry.
Yep.
So that further cut down on what we had. So I had to make a decision.
Well, it was another
to close it.
It was another case like we were talking about. Why should we close it? You think about, well, why isn't it selling? Well, you go back over and it's a beautiful spot. It's very eye-catching. It was, it looked good, but maybe it's because it was further back. So you even moved to a different showcase at one point.
Yeah.
So they had a better view. You could see it right from the aisle. It wasn't blocked by any other cases. So, you were trying to figure out why, if that was the case.
Yeah.
So, and the prices you tried, and you even did sales on it, thinking maybe if I ran a sale just strictly on that.
Yeah.
So you went through all the steps of the evaluation. Is it something that's not, it's not old, it's not dirty, it's priced well, it's clean, it looks good, it's
well
in a good
stocked,
stock. Yeah.
good prices.
So, I mean, you
nice
sold a
merchandise.
few things. It's
Yeah.
not like you didn't sell anything, but it wasn't making the money it
It
needed
wasn't anywhere near where I wanted it to be.
to. So then how long did you have that booth?
4 or 5 months.
I was going to say.
Maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And, you
Had
know.
to make that decision.
Yeah, you have
Pull
to
the
make
trigger.
that decision. And that's not easy, because I had this idea and I executed the idea perfectly, but people didn't want it, or not enough people wanted it. And it is what it is. It is what it is. So, having a locked space, I'm limited to what I can put in there. So I made a decision. We have a booth and a half.
Yeah.
So we closed, I made the decision to close the showcase, and then we ended up just getting a double space. So we literally have had 200 square feet. And if you go back to some of my early videos, you will get tours of it.
The bright yellow.
Oh my goodness, it was like school bus orangey yellow color.
Oh,
so
awful.
that I went through when I painted that. We showed you how we set it up, how we moved everything. So, I mean, we did all that work. So we have had a locked case, a half space, a full space, and a double space. So we've run the gamut.
Yep.
And when we decided to come to the new place, and down the road we'll go over the reasons why we chose to move to this new space. But when we were deciding, what size space do we want? We were coming from a double space. And at that point, I knew that I wanted to sell more on eBay. So when we left, it was May.
Yeah, I stayed just a
late
little
May.
bit longer because I had a end cap right by the register, and I was making handmade candies,
Yeah,
chocolates.
yeah.
So I decided to hang in there just a little bit longer, and then again, that decision, do I stay or do I go, that I had to make too.
So in deciding to move, that's why we said let's get a full size, space, and I wanted to build up my eBay business. We left in essentially April or May. We got into the new space the beginning of September, so I essentially had the whole summer to pick and then really build up my eBay business. And when we got the space, we just not too long ago talked about this. You said, do you ever think we're going to want to get a bigger space? And I'm like, if I'm going to expend more energy right now, I'm going to put that toward eBay. And that's something that it can go up and down. I can, expend as much energy as I want on that. But, when we had the double space out at the old mall,
That was a lot of work.
it was a lot of work to source and find stuff to keep in there, to keep it fresh, to keep it from looking picked over. 200 square feet. That is a lot of space to fill up.
It was.
And then we were starting to get to a point where it was becoming less fun than it used to be. And that's when we're like, if we're going to make this change, let's start with a regular full-size booth and we'll go from there.
Yep.
So, Kim and I are very pragmatic in how we make decisions. We don't just go, yeah, let's just do this, or let's just go here. I mean, I know I do, and you probably do too. You almost think things to death.
Yeah, I beat an old dog, a dead dog. I gave beat. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we're very careful. We're very, we're very careful about how we're spending our money, how we're spending our energy, how we're spending our time, and I think that's made us really good business people.
Yeah, and see, that's what it all comes down to, really. Unless, like we said, you're one of those people that's in it for the fun of it. When you're deciding whether to open that booth, or in this case, we're discussing closing a booth, if you're in it for the business, you have to make business decisions. And sometimes those are not easy decisions to make because there's a lot, emotion and all kinds of other things that are in it. But when you put it on paper and you list out the reasons why, then those are the decisions you have to make. And in this case is deciding, is there things I can do to make it better? Do I have the time to spend in here? If I don't have the time, but I want to continue on, if I'm still making enough money when the time is put into the booth to keep it organized and full, do I have the money then to pay someone else to keep it operating when I'm not able to come in? I mean, there's, I'm running out of things to source. Well, you may know someone who's getting ready to clean out their house, or they're cleaning out a bedroom, or they're downsizing. People, when they know that, they would rather give you something that you can benefit from than sticking it in a box and donating it sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if that's one of the reasons, can I close my booth because I'm having a hard time sourcing or filling it right now because of maybe other obligations? Ask around, tell people, hey, you're cleaning out that closet anytime soon, I'll take your stuff. Well, you may end up with stuff that you're going to donate for them, but you still might find that gem or two in there.
Yeah, especially if your cost of goods is Zippo.
There you go.
That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't lose on that.
So I guess in talking about this, are you making your rent? What are the issues of the mall itself? What are the issues of your booth, your location, your vendor, what you're selling? And I guess you have certain things that are in your control, certain things that are out of your control. Now, if you have decided this, what we've gone over, it's essentially things are under my control and why it's not succeeding.
Yep.
So, like Kim said, you have to make a decision. Are you willing to step it up, to put in the work, or not? A lot of people love to source. It's just like eBay. Oh, you love to go buy stuff, but you got to sit down and list it and take pictures and all that stuff. Where's the breakdown in your chain of what you're doing? Because everybody has certain parts of the business that they love to do, and others it's kind of eh. So are you willing or able to step it up? And that's a tough choice, because nobody wants to say, you know what, this isn't working and I'm not going to do it anymore. Because our business is very, like you said, emotional. And when you put stuff in there, you might put off closing. If that's truly what needs to happen, we love what we're doing, but we're not going to tell you to stay open no matter what. I mean, if you got, family obligations or health issues, or transportation isn't working, or sourcing has gotten too difficult, whatever the case might be, you just need to be honest with yourself. And if you say, I'm going to stay open, then you're going to have to sit down and say, where's the breakdown? Do I not have enough stuff? Okay, I need to make up a day to go sourcing. Am I not moving stuff enough around? Am I not there at the physical space enough to keep it fresh and to keep it moving? Are you able to carve out some time and take new stuff in every week or every other week, or whatever works best for you? Are you willing and able to do that? I would say probably 50 to 60% of the people who are vendors in our mall space, in both places, are over 60. Would you say that?
Yeah,
60 to 65?
a lot of them. Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of
well,
them
we're not included in that group.
Of course not.
Of course not.
But, I mean, you think about, you're physically maybe not able to do what you were able to do early on when you started. And, so that's another consideration. Also maintaining. There's a certain amount of different stages of your booth that you're going to have a ton of work when you first open, and when you're first getting things in and moving it and getting, your big display pieces set up. That's a lot of work, a lot of physical work, a lot of mental work. And then sourcing and having a schedule. And then you get to a point where maybe the booth is pretty much set up how you want. Now you're mainly just bringing in new stuff. Maybe every month or every other month you're rearranging stuff. Or you have like we have at our mall, you have a restocking day where you come in and you move a lot of stuff when there's no customers in there. So at different stages of the year and of your booth, and when you open and where you're at now, there's different levels of work that need to be done.
Well, it's just like, I think of like even in a house setting. You move in, you set everything up, you set up your kitchen, you put your dishes a certain way. Well, then after you're in that house for a while, you realize this really isn't working. It's hard to reach these glasses over here. Maybe I should move them over there. Or, you start buying things and groceries or whatever, and you end up shoving stuff where it doesn't belong. And there comes a point where in your house working at, you need to stop and say, I need to clean this cabinet out. I need to reorganize this because I can't find anything. And it's the same thing as a booth. You can get it all set up and looking pretty and bring in some stuff and you shove it here and shove it there, but you have to take the time to reorganize it, straighten it up, just like your major house cleaning or cleaning out a cabinet. It has to be done. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Investing that extra time to do it.
Even I mean, on YouTube, there's just so many, here's how to organize, and here's how to be organized, and here's how to get organized. And a lot of those systems that I've noticed over time, if they don't make sense, and they don't, serve your need, and it isn't a logical way that things are organized, you're never going to maintain that.
Nope.
So that's the same is true with the booth. If you have it in a logical way, and then you have a schedule, and this is what we're going to do, and this is where we keep mainly this stuff or that stuff, and it's, once it kind of makes sense, I mean, when you're putting in that time, because I know there's people, we had a restocking day just literally yesterday, and we were there 4.5 hours. Now that would, if it was on a customer open day, we always step out of our booth when we have customers, and that literally would have been about 8 hours of work. Because if you're moving a shelf or you're moving a piece of your display or something, forget it. There's just no way you can do that while customers are there. And we were there for 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
There were people that were, I got there at 3. Kim got there about 3:40ish. She had a couple errands to run. It opened at 1.
Yep.
There were people waiting to get in when the door opened. And their space when we left at 7, and they were only open till 8,
they were supposed
looked
to be
like
8.
a bomb went off.
Oh, man.
So...
Yeah, well, and thinking, while you were talking, I was thinking, you just reorganized last week all the things on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's part of that, investing the time. We don't sell the same type of item. We don't have a setup like a store where, like some of them, like we're talking about the primitive items, some of those, they have racks made just for that type of item, and they have certain sized pictures on canvas that light up, and so it's set up where you restock and you put it where it fits and where it's supposed to go. We sell eclectic whatevers.
That's a fancy word for doesn't match.
Yes, that's... So when you think about that, you get stuff and you hang it on the wall and it looks gorgeous and it's beautiful, and then somebody has the nerve to come along and buy something.
Yeah, wreck the whole display. I mean, come on.
So then you have these odd spots, and you got something, and you hang it up there, and then next time you come in, you may move one thing over to hang something else up there, and after a while, it's just so hodgepodge.
Yeah, we did that with one of our walls that we got to a point, and I had a large... I'm sure when you watch my videos, you've seen it was like 2.5 feet tall, and it was an owl made out of sticks, and it hung on the wall. And I said, I got that wall, it got to be such a mess. And I went in with things to hang up, and it was gone. Somebody stole it. Somebody bought it, and I was like, yes! So literally, I mean, it's not like your house where you hang up all these pictures and all the frames match and look, it's all beautiful. And it'd be like somebody coming into your house and just taking one off the wall and walking off with it. You're like, great, now I got to rearrange it.
Yep.
I mean, that's part of our business. But like you said, things just really start to get sloppy after a while.
So that might be part of the reason why your sales are slow or anything else, and you're having just take the time are you able to invest the time in it is one of the points that you were making, and that's part of it. Are you able to invest that time, even monthly or whatever, to go in and take a minute to totally redo or rearrange whatever's needed for the booth?
And this figures in too. I mean, if you're doing this mainly, either this or eBay or something that is your primary job, you're going to have more time. There are vendors, and I couldn't even give you a percentage of people who they work 40 hours a week. And I have, if I go into the mall on a Saturday or a Sunday, I have vendors asking me, can I help you with something? Because I don't know them. I never see them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm during the week and they're on the weekend, and we never, communicate or talk or anything. So there's that, if you have a limited amount of time, that going into it, that, am I going to have enough time to maintain this space? Do I need to make a smaller space? Do I need to close my space? I think when Kim and I started this podcast, we said we want to be totally honest and not, having a booth is wonderful and nothing ever goes wrong and everything's great. And it's like, we want to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and things you might not have considered. And that's certainly, we're not going to talk you, these podcasts aren't going to talk you into having a space. And you're like, oh, things aren't working out. And we're like, no, everything's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just telling you, these are things you need to know. These are things you need to consider. We've been doing this for almost a decade, and we've figured a few things out over the years. So, a little.
Our little bumps and bruises along the way.
That's it. So it comes down to, what's the problem? Is it something you can do about, something you can fix, or it's within your power? Are you willing to do it? So there, I just gave the whole synopsis of the podcast.
We spent like almost a whole hour when you could have just surmised it like that.
Well,
we could have said goodbye and been on our way.
We got to break it down. So I guess that's where we're at. Are you willing, to put in the effort? Are you willing to change your strategy? Because when you come into a spot and you think, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it, and it doesn't turn out that it's not working that way, are you just going to say, no, this is what I do?
You have to be flexible. You have to think outside the box. You have to be willing to change and adapt to what your sales in that area are going to let you sell.
And if things aren't working out for whatever reason, don't take it personally. I mean, it's not like somebody comes up to you and says, you're ugly. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? This is something I have an expectation. This is something I can do something about. If it doesn't work out for whatever reasons, you're not a failure. You're not terrible. You're not a bad person. It's just sometimes things just don't work the way we want them to. And we have to be able to look at that and not say, I know this is funny because we just talked about this again too, is when we went in and we took our clearance stuff out to put new spring and summer stuff out, Kim and I kept picking up things of ours to pack away, to either donate or to put away, to bring out another time. And a couple times we look at each other and we're holding an item and we go, why doesn't anybody not want this? It's so cute. So, I mean, it's not like you can't take it personal. If somebody doesn't want that cute thing you picked up, that's just the way it is. And everybody, no matter how many years you've been doing this, or how good or bad you are at it, everybody has duds. And that's for eBay as well as having a physical space. I mean, you could literally write free on something and somebody would not pick it up and take it home.
Well, prime example, the stuff that I hand make. I was hand sewing all those items and I had them out at the other place. I couldn't have gave them away at the door as people exited for free. I sold maybe one or two the whole time we were there. But at the other place, people are paying, and they're paying far more than what I had them marked for at the other place. So you just have to, they were great and wonderful. Why aren't they selling? That just wasn't the venue for them.
I think, too, you being in a more rural area, there was more people that said, I could make that.
I don't know what it was.
And here, people are more cityified. And they want to just go in, it isn't that cute, or that'll look nice on my table. They just want to pick it up and take it home. So you just have to, that's just a regional thing.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, well, things are different state to state. We're a half an hour apart.
That's right.
We're literally in the same county. as
one end to the other.
Yeah, one end to the other of the same
Yeah.
county in the same state.
That's why you got to know.
And it's night and day.
That's why you have to take, as we have touched on before, and we'll discuss more. You have to know your customer.
Yep.
You have to know what's selling and why and what, and you have to do
Yeah.
your research. You have to be a smart seller.
So I think that's definitely something we're going to have a podcast on, because that's, that makes perfect sense. I mean, when you're selling something on eBay, you're selling globally, literally. You're selling to people all over the world. And so many people have access to looking at that. When you are in our area, there are certain people who are visiting people, who are just driving through, or people who live there. You're not going to have somebody from Australia say, oh, this is cute. I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to come over and I'm going to shop. It's just doesn't happen that way. So you're exposed to less people. So you have to be more regional friendly than you do on eBay. Because there are things that you can't give away. Cleveland Brown stuff, you can't give it away around here. And people say, nobody wants Cleveland Brown stuff. I sell Cleveland Brown stuff on eBay all the time. And it's gone everywhere from Florida to Hawaii. Literally. So, people say, oh, nobody wants it. Well, maybe somebody don't want it here, but somebody wants it somewhere else. So, that's I guess that's all we had. We're
That's
so
it.
awesome.
That is all.
We are so awesome. So yeah, it's nice for us when we discuss this stuff and we're talking, that we come up with ideas, and she'll say, oh, what about that? I'm like, oh yeah, this and that. So I mean, it's really good to have this back and forth where we're coming up with different ideas, and it's benefiting you guys, whether you have a space or not, or you just want to hear us ramble on, and you're sitting there listing on eBay right now. I mean, it's...
I don't know anyone who does that, do you? Who will just listen to things while they're
There are times
eBaying,
I
or...
want to watch a video, and there are times when I want to do something else. And if you're showing me a haul, I want to be paying attention to what you got.
Yep.
And I can't do that when I'm on another screen trying to balance my checkbook or list something on eBay, and you go,
Yep.
and look at this. I have to click back over and go, what? Show me. So there are times
Yep.
I like to listen and just get information that way. So
it's either a podcast or Disney music.
I don't know. Depends on what kind of mood you're in, I guess. So, well, that's all we have for this podcast. Next week, we have another interesting, riveting subject chosen. And
What was it? It was so riveting I forgot.
You gonna look? Because I don't know if I remember it all.
I marked it down here. See how well organized we are.
Yes, it's gonna be what? Podcast number 6?
6.
It'll be so neat to be in double digits, won't it?
Well,
Okay, I have it.
oh, did you find it? Good.
Yes.
Before me.
Should I sell items that other vendors are selling?
And we shall make you wait on that answer.
So ruminate upon that, and we will discuss it
Oh,
in
that's
depth.
another big thing.
Yeah, ruminate. Isn't that cool? So, we'll have some good information next week. And that is all. We still do not have a sign-off, but we will eventually get our act together. We got to do this before 10, so that'll be our...
Oh, man, you just... God,
You got...
put a time limit on things.
You got 5 more. We're halfway there. I think we can come up with that.
All right.
So, as usual, I'm going to go into my regular spiel. Please give this video or audio a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. If you have a question and you don't want to pose it down in the comment box, you can email me at jen@pudgypicker.com for either Kim or I, and we will cover that information and not mention your name from our podcast previously. We're starting to gather questions, and we're eventually going to just have a question and answer session, and because we want to make sure that if you have questions on anything we've covered or anything that it's brought up to your mind that you have a question about, please ask us. We are more than willing to give you any information we have.
We'll share our wealth of knowledge.
And if we don't know, we'll say so.
Or we'll fake it real good. No.
Fake it till you make it. Okay, so that is all we have, and we will see you next time. So we will talk later. Is that it?
That's
See,
it.
We need something catchy.
I know. I have to work on it. Any suggestions? Put them below.
Yes, please. Please do.
Bye.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.